First things first, we fill up a pot of water and we set it up so that we can bring it to a boil. I keep it simple with white cheddar, mild cheddar, and Colby Jack. They go great together and you can buy them pretty much everywhere. While the water comes to a boil, I'll grate the cheese, making sure to keep the cheeses separate until I'm ready to add them to the noodles. Last one is the Colby Jack, and then we're all done. By the time I'm done grating the cheese, the water is usually come up to a boil. Now that the water is boiling, I'll season it with sea salt. I'm a little generous when seasoning the water. This will be the only salt to use in the whole dish. Okay, now we're adding the elbow macaroni noodles. This is 1 pound of elbow macaroni noodles. You can use whatever brand you like. This is what I had on hand for the video today, just as long as it says elbow macaroni. Now I'm adding a half a stick of butter to a separate pot, and I'm going to melt that and get that started with the creamy sauce now that we have our noodles boiling. I'll add a little black pepper straight to the melting butter. Butter is still melting here. And here I am now adding about 1/3 of a cup of all-purpose flour. We're going to stir that into the melted butter and black pepper until all the butter is melted and the flour is cooked. It takes usually about, I don't know, about 2 minutes for the flour to cook and get that raw flour taste out of it. This is about the consistency we want the creamy sauce to look like at this point. Once we've stirred the flour into the butter, we don't want it too thick, but we don't want it too thin either. Now I'm adding in the half and half. I use about 3 cups of half and half. I do like to split it, like adding maybe, let's say we'll add a cup at a time so that we can whisk it in slowly and get out all the lumps and make sure we have the right consistency without adding too much or too little half and half. Right here is when it starts to look a little thick and I see that I need to add more half and half. I switch back over to the whisk so that I can make sure I don't have too many lumps. Try to avoid eating lumps. And see here, this is where it starts to get thick again, so I touch it up with some more half and half so that I can make sure I have the right consistency, not too thick, not too thin. Right here is the consistency I'm looking for the creamy sauce. Not too thick, not too thin. Just straining the noodles. And I add most of them to a large bowl. I take the other half a stick of butter and I just plop it in there with the noodles to swish it around and coat the noodles. Make sure they don't clump up together. Now I'm just adding the rest of the noodles from the pot to my bowl so that I can get it all mixed in. after coating the noodles with the butter, I'll pull out the extra butter just to make sure I don't have too much butter in there with the cheese. We don't want it too greasy, so I just coated the noodles with the butter. And here's where I start to add the cheese. Now I start with the white cheddar, that's the predominant cheese in the macaroni and cheese, and I like to add it straight to the noodles, not to the creamy sauce. That way I can see how it coats the noodles, and as long as the cheese is coating the noodles, I see a little bite of cheese on every noodle, then I know I have enough cheese. This way I can control the flavor a little better than just adding the cheese to the creamy sauce. I can balance out the cheese to creamy sauce to butter ratio, and it just comes out delectable every time. It's kind of hard for me to measure how much white cheddar I put in the macaroni and cheese. It just probably varies every time. However much the noodles ask for that day is how much white cheddar I put in. It's usually about a pound of white cheddar that's going into a dish that makes like a half sheet aluminum foil pan or a medium-sized casserole dish. And I added the entire 8 ounces of mild cheddar to the white cheddar. It does balance out the flavor. The white cheddar is kind of sharp, it's strong. So the mild cheddar just balances that strong taste out. This is all the cheese we'll add to the bowl. We'll save the Colby Jack for the topping, and I'm just gently trying to fold in all the cheese and not make too much of a mess. Now I'm ready to add my creamy sauce. I'm going to add it slowly so I don't make a mess. Next time, I guess I'll use a bigger bowl. As I stir in the creamy sauce, it melts the cheese and makes everything all creamy and delicious. And here's the rest of the creamy sauce going in. Now that it's all pretty much mixed in, I transfer it over to my casserole dish. It will also fit in the aluminum size, the half sheet aluminum size pan if you're like taking it to a party or setting it out like that. If you're using this recipe for a full size pan, I would basically triple it because of the depth of that full size aluminum pan. But this is the medium size casserole dish. I'll link the dish set in the description, and it's the medium one out of the 3 in the set. And I just kind of swish everything around and make sure it's even inside the casserole dish. And I don't butter the dish. It's not gonna stick. It's gonna be just fine. I don't want to add any extra grease to the mac and cheese by buttering my casserole dish. And we add the Colby Jack right to the top for it to melt and look pretty. I do like the Colby Jack because it melts good and it's a mild taste, so it balances out that sharp white cheddar in the dish. And we just spread it out evenly I'll use the whole 8 ounces to coat the top. Now it's going in a preheated oven at 375 for about 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, I set the oven to broil so I can brown the top. It takes about 4 minutes to brown the top using the broiler, like literally 4 minutes to get it like this. You don't want to take your eyes off of it during this time. It can go from good to terrible in 5 minutes. Here it is all finished. Not too bad, right? Here's my secret ingredient right here. Mac and cheese. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm gonna get better.